Chapter 7 The Mines of Mercury. They flicked on their suit lights, and the darkness was alleviated over a little space. The little tunnel that stretched out before them, dimly and more dimly, and ending in darkness. The light beam had the usual sharp edge, inevitable in a vacuum. Everything outside the direct beam remained completely black. The tall man from Earth and his short companion from Mars faced that darkness, and marched forward into the bowels of Mercury. In the radiance of their suit lights, Bigman looked curiously about the tunnel, which resembled those he'd seen on the moon. Rounded out smoothly by the use of blasters and disintegrating procedures, it stretched out straight and even. The walls were curved and merged into the rocky ceiling. The oval cross-section, slightly flattened above and quite flattened below, made for the greatest structural strength. Bigman could hear his own steps through the air in his suit. He could sense Lucky's step only as a small shock of vibration along the rock. It was not quite sound, but to a person who had passed as much of his life in vacuum and near vacuum as Bigman had, it was almost as meaningful. He could hear the vibration of the solid material, much as ordinary earthmen could hear the vibration of air, which is called sound. Periodically they passed columns of rock which had been left unblasted and served as buttresses for the layers of rock between the tunnel and the surface. Again, this was like the mines on the moon, except that the buttresses were both thicker and more numerous here, which was reasonable, since Mercury's gravity, small as it was 2.5 times that of the moon. Tunnels branched off the main shaft along which they traveled. Lucky, who seemed in no hurry, paused at each opening in order to compare matters with the chart he carried. To Bigman, the most melancholy aspect of the mines was the vestiges of one-time human occupancy. The bolts for alumino plates must once have been attached to keep the corridors blazing with the light of day. The faint marks where paramagnetic relays must have once afforded traction for ore cars. Occasional side pockets where rooms or laboratories must have existed, where miners might pause to eat at field kitchen, or where samples of ore may be assayed. All dismantled now, all torn down, and only bare rock left. But Bigman was not the man to brood over long on such matters. Rather, he grew concerned at the lack of action. He had not come out here merely for the walk. He said, "Lucky, the ergometer doesn't show a thing." "I know, Bigman. Cover." He said it quietly, with no special emphasis, but Bigman knew what it meant. He shoved his radio control to the particular notch which activated a shield for the carrier wave and scrambled the message. It was not regulation equipment on a spacesuit, but it was routine for Lucky and Bigman. Bigman had added the scrambler to the radio controls when preparing the suits, almost without giving the matter a conscious thought. Bigman's heart was beating a little faster. When Lucky called for a tight scrambled beam between the two of them, danger was near. Nearer, at any rate. He said, "What's up, Lucky?" "It's time to talk." Bigman's voice had a faintly far-off sound, as though it was coming indeterminately from all directions. This was due to the inevitable lack of perfection on the part of the receiving unscrambler, which always left a small fraction of noise. Lucky said, "This is Tunnel 7A according to the chart. It leads back by a fairly simple route to one of the vertical shafts leading to the surface. I'll be going there." Bigman said, amazed, "You will? Why, Lucky?" "To get to the surface," said Lucky, laughed lightly. "Why else?" "What for?" "In order to travel along the surface to the hangar and the shooting star. When I went to the ship last time, I took the new INSO suit with me." Bigman chewed that over and said slowly, "Does that mean you'll be headed for Sunside?" "Right. I'll be headed for the big sun. I can't get lost, at least, since I only need to follow the coronal glow on the horizon. It makes it very simple." "Come off it, Lucky, will you? I thought it was the mines that had the Syrians in 'em. Didn't you prove that at the banquet?" "No, Bigman, I didn't prove it. I just fast-talked it into sounding as though it were proven." "And why didn't you say so to me?" "Because we've argued this out before. I don't want to go into it. I can't risk your losing your temper at the wrong time. If I told you we were coming down here as part of a deeper plan, if, for any reason, Cook had irritated you, you might have blurted it right out." "I would not, Lucky. It's just that you hate to say anything at all until you're all ready." "There's that, too," admitted Lucky. "Anyway, that's the situation. I wanted everyone to think I was going into the mines. I wanted everyone to think I had the foggiest notion of heading for Sunside. The safest way of seeing it was to make sure but nobody, not even you, Bigman, thought any differently. Can you tell me why, Lucky? Or is it all still a big secret? I can tell you this. I have a strong notion that someone at the dome is behind the sabotage. I don't believe in the Syrian theory. Bigman was disappointed. You mean there's nothing down here in the mines? I could be wrong, but I agree with Dr. Cook. It is just too unlikely that Sirius would put all the effort that would be involved in setting up a secret base on Mercury just to achieve a little bit of sabotage. It would be much more likely that, if they wanted to do such a thing, they would bribe an Earthman to do it. After all, who slashed the INSO suit? That, at least, can't be blamed on Syrians. Even Dr. Rivera hadn't suggested there are Syrians inside the dome. Then you're looking for a traitor, Lucky? I'm looking for the saboteur. He may be a traitor in the pay of Sirius, or he may be working for reasons of his own. I hope the answer's on the sun side, and I hope, furthermore, that my smokescreen concerning an invasion of the mines will keep the guilty person from having time to cover up, or from preparing an uncomfortable reception for me. What answer do you expect? I'll know when I find it. Okay, said Lucky. I'm sold, Lucky. On our way, let's go. Hold on there, cried Lucky in honest perturbation. Great galaxy, boy, I said I'm going. There's only one INSO suit. You'll stay here. For the first time, the significance of the pronouns Lucky had used sank into Bigman's consciousness. Lucky had said I. Not once had he said we. And yet Bigman, with the easy confidence of long association, had assumed that I meant we. Lucky! He cried, torn between outrage and dismay. Why do I have to stay? Because I want the men at the dome to be sure that we're here. You keep the chart and follow the route we talked about, or something like it. Report back to Cook every hour. Tell them where you are, what you see, tell the truth. You don't have to make anything up, except that you say that I'm with you. Bigman considered that. Well, what if they want to talk to you? Tell them I'm busy. Know that you think you've just seen a Syrian. Say you've got cut off. Make up something, but keep them thinking I'm here, see? All right, Suns of Mars. You go Sunside and have all the fun, and I'll just wander around in the dark playing games on the suit radio. Cheer up, Bigman. There may be something in the mines. I'm not always right. I'll bet you are this time. There's nothing down here. Lucky couldn't resist a joke. There's the freezing death Cook spoke about. You can investigate that. Bigman didn't see the humor. He said, shut up. There was a short pause. Then Lucky placed his hand on the other's shoulder. All right, that wasn't funny, Bigman, and I'm sorry. Now cheer up, really. We'll be together again in no time. You know that. Bigman pushed Lucky's arm to one side. All right, drop the soap. You say I gotta do it, so I'll do it. Only you'll probably get sunstroke without me there to keep an eye on you, you big ox. Lucky laughed. I'll try to be careful. He turned down Tunnel 7A, but had not taken 2 steps when Bigman called out, Lucky! Lucky stopped. What? Bigman cleared his throat. Listen, don't take stupid chances, will you? I mean, I'm not going to be around to drag you out of trouble. Lucky said, Now you sound like Uncle Hector. Suppose you take some of your own advice, eh? It was as close as they ever got to expressing their real affection to one another. Lucky waved his hand and stood glimmering for a moment in Bigman's suit light. Then he turned and went off. Bigman looked after him, following his figure as it gradually melted into the surrounding shadows until it turned about a curve in the tunnel and was lost to him. He felt the silence, and the loneliness doubled. If he had not been John Bigman Jones, he might have weakened with the sense of loss, been overwhelmed at finding himself alone. But he was John Bigman Jones, and he set his jaw and clamped his teeth and marched further down the mine shaft with unshakable tread. Bigman made his first call to the dome 15 minutes later. He was miserable. How could he believe that Lucky seriously expected adventure in the mines? Would Lucky have arranged to make radio calls for the Syrians to pick up and keep tabs on? Sure, it was a tight beam, but the messages weren't scrambled, and no beam was so tight it could be tapped with patience. He wondered why Cook had allowed such an arrangement, and almost at once the thought occurred to him that Cook disbelieved in the Syrians too. Only Bigman had believed. Big brain. At the moment, he could have chewed through a spaceship hole. He gathered in Cook and used the agreed-upon signal for all clear. Cook's voice at once shot back. All clear? Sands of Mars, yes. Lucky's up ahead 20 feet, but there's no sign of anything. Look, if I buzzed all clear, take my word for it next time. Let me talk to Lucky Starr. What for? Pigman said, casual with an effort. Get him next time. Cook hesitated, then said, All right. Pigman nodded to himself grimly. There'd be no next time. He'd buzz all clear, and that'd be all. Only, how long was he supposed to wander about in the dark before he heard from Lucky? An hour? 2? 6? Suppose 6 hours went by and there's no word. How long should he stay? How long could he stay? But what if Cook demanded specific information? Lucky had said to describe things, but what if Bigman accidentally failed to keep up with the act? What if he tipped the boat and not slipped the fact that Lucky had gone into the sunside? Lucky would never trust him again, with anything. He put the thought aside. It would do him no good to concentrate on it. If only there was something to distract him. Something besides darkness and vacuum, besides the faint vibration of his own footsteps and the sound of his own breath. He stopped to check his position in the mine shaft. The side passages had letters and numbers ground sharply into the walls, and time had done nothing to dull their sharpness. Checking wasn't difficult. However, the low temperature made the chart brittle and difficult to handle, and that didn't sweeten his mood. He turned his suit light on, his chest controls in order, and he might adjust the humidifier. The inner surface of his faceplate was beginning to mist over faintly from the moisture in his breath, probably because the temperature within rose with his temper, he told himself. He had just completed the adjustment when he moved his head sharply to one side as though he were suddenly cocking an ear to listen. It was exactly what he was doing. He strained to sense the rhythm of the faint vibration that he heard, now only because his own steps had ceased. He held his breath, remained as motionless as the rocky wall of the tunnel. Lucky? He breathed into the transmitter. Lucky? The fingers of his right hand had adjusted the controls. The carrier wave was scrambled. No one else would make sense of that light whisper. But Lucky would, and soon his voice would come in answer. Bigman was ashamed to admit to himself how welcome that voice would be. Lucky? He said again. The vibration continued. There was no answer. Bigman's breathing quickened, first with tension, then with a savage joy born of excitement that always came over him when danger was in the offing. There was something else in the mines of Mercury with him, someone other than Lucky. Who then? A Syrian? Had Lucky been right all he had thought he was merely putting up a smoke screen? Maybe. Bigman drew his blaster and put out his suit light. Did they know he was there? Were they coming to get him? The vibrations weren't the blurred, non-rhythmic sound of many people, or even 2 or 3. To Bigman's keen ear, the distinctly separated thrum-thrum of vibration was the sound of one man's legs, rhythmically advancing. And Bigman would meet any one man, anywhere, under any conditions. Quietly, he put out his hand, touching the nearer wall. The vibrations sharpened noticeably. The other was in that direction, then. He moved forward, quietly in the pitch dark, his hand keeping a light touch on the wall. The vibrations being set up by the other were too intense, too careless. Either the other believed himself alone in the mines, as Bigman himself had until a moment before, or, if he were following Bigman, he wasn't wise in the ways of the vacuum. Bigman's own footsteps had died to a murmur as he advanced cat-like, yet the other's vibrations showed no change. Again, if the other had been following Bigman by sound, the sudden change in Bigman's progress should have been reflected in a change in the other's. It wasn't. The conclusion. Same conclusion, then, as before. He turned right. The next side tunnel entrance continued. His hand on the wall at once kept him along the way and guided him toward the other. And then there was a blinding flash of a suit light far ahead in the darkness, as the motion of another's body whipped the beam across him. Bigman froze against the wall. The light vanished. The other had passed along across the tunnel Bigman was on. He was not advancing along it. Bigman hurried forward lightly. He would find that cross tunnel, and then he would be behind the other. They would meet then. He, Bigman, representing Earth and the Council of Science, and the enemy representing... whom?